Welcome you all to Feeling Like a Snack, the podcast sponsored by the Protein Snack Shop. We got all kinds of guests today. We've got an in-studio guest. We've got two healthcare professionals streaming live from Wilmington. You may or may not have seen them before, but we're happy to have them back. We're happy to have Brian in studio. Brian is an investing partner at Protein Snack Shop, has been a huge asset. We met Brian at the Nolensville Farmers Market. He came in and tried some samples and came in week after week. And so I'll let Brian kind of take over his background and how we connected and why you're a part of Protein Snack Shop today.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, so I met Sonny, like you said, at the farmer's market. I've sold nutritional supplements all my life, and have done well with that, and love just helping people through nutrition. And so it was just a great fit when we were met and and talked over the next several months. And so it's just been a real blessing to get to know Sonny and Dana and be a part of the Protein Snack Shop team. So yeah, I've always had the drive as an entrepreneur, to make a difference and make an income, make a substantial income, just because my father was in the radio business, for many years and has done really well with that. And so, I got the bug from that. And so immediately out of high school, I actually went into sell vacuum cleaners of all things.
Those are cool vacuum cleaners too, by the way.
Yeah. So we my wife and I, she's kind of my Vanna White. She would come with me on the demonstrations, and we sold rainbow vacuums, which are amazing. They use water as a filtration system. And just a side note on that, not to get too far off a track, but I believe in those things so much that, with a bag vacuum, you actually intake air because you have to suck up the dirt, right? So the problem is the dirt has to have a place to escape, otherwise the bag would explode. And so you're just spewing dirt around in essence, versus the rainbow has water, and water doesn't have holes in it, so it just filters and catches all that dirt. So they're just most amazing vacuums. I love doing that, again, because I believed in what they were and how they could help people keep their houses cleaner. But then I got into the direct sales business from there, into network marketing, and I love that too, because again, it's all about helping people. I think there's a lot of people that get into direct sales and they think that it's all about making money off of people. But truly, if you want to be successful in that business, you have to help other people become successful.
And be genuine.
Yes.
I tried it, and there's, a lot of people that pretend that they care, but I've listened to you, man. Like, you genuinely love on the people. You have such a special connection with them, just like we do. I mean, you become like a brother to me. So, yeah, it's but that was just a side note, because I was in it and I saw a lot of those people that pretended like they care, but they really didn't care.
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, tell us a little bit more about your progression through network marketing and where you're at still today.
Yeah. And so I just continue to do, I've done direct sales actually for just over 20 years now, and I've had success in different companies, and then also did some affiliate marketing, some online affiliate marketing. And so I love the marketing aspect, trying to just, figure that stuff out. So it's been fun, even with Protein Snack Shop, to go through it, because a lot of it's still, even though it's sales and marketing, it's still a lot of new things. And so it's been
Lots of
fun.
New things. Lots of new things every day.
It's always fun. Side note, to have Sonny around, it's such a blessing. He provides a lot of good entertainment and also a lot of good fellowship time. So that's been awesome. But then, I was able to make a substantial income from network marketing, so it allowed me to invest into other opportunities. And, obviously here with Protein Snack Shop, and I'm just so excited about Protein Snack Shop and what it stands for, and Sonny and Dana, and what they believe in. They believe in the same as me. We want to really serve people.
That's right.
And so that's what it comes down to, is making some amazing, snacks that have, they're nutrient dense, but also make an impact on people's lives.
That's right. That's exactly. So you've been a huge asset. We're happy to have you here. We'll have you back more.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Now, from North Carolina, we have Miss Bailey Wilkes and Dr. Melody Kizer. Bailey's a speech pathologist. She's got a large practice in Wilmington. She's done a little bit in that arena, pretty much a little bit of everything in speech pathology. Dr. Kizer, as you know or may not know if you've watched the previous show, she is a clinical consultant and a dietitian. 10 nursing homes, right? Is that right? Yep. And she's also got a PhD in epidemiology. Did I get it all right? Okay. So, but So Bailey, give us a little background about you. I really was touched about why you went into speech pathology, what, and then kind of what a day looks like, your patients. That just kind of give us a little bit about you and your day and why you chose speech pathology.
I've been a speech language pathologist for 17 years now. My focus now is solely with adult and geriatric populations. What I specialize in is dysphagia, which is swallowing impairment. I do all the outpatient, objective, instrumental, modified barium swallow studies for the pretty much this area. And I also evaluate and treat for multiple other speech language disorders, including dysarthria, aphasia, cognitive disorders, and voice impairments.
Very good. So,
Got into it
yeah.
because I had a very close family member who was a very late talker and had a lot of difficulty with language development throughout their life, starting from birth all the way until early adulthood, and had a speech pathologist that I was able to observe and interact with and learn from. And I saw the benefits from speech pathology and the impact they can have on a person and a family. Even though I didn't go into like the pediatrics or even school age routes, it's something that I respect a lot and found to be extremely rewarding career.
Sure. See, fits right into the culture. Loves to serve other people.
Amen.
Dr. Kizer's there too. But so tell us kind of what. So your patients, you gave us a little bit of that. What is a typical day? Just kind of remind the audience if they didn't get to see the previous podcast, what that looks like. Like, or even a typical week, kind of in summary, what you do.
Okay. So each week I see up to 20 patients, new, different patients with unique etiologies that are requiring medical evaluations, interventions because of their swallowing disorders, post-stroke, head and neck cancer, Parkinson's disease, traumatic brain injury, number of things. Some people just, kind of end of life and need to determine, what's the safest, least restrictive diet, and that can maintain their caloric needs as well as hydration and quality of life and reduce the risk of aspiration related illnesses that would end them up in the hospital. So I do that for 4 hours each day, essentially. And in the afternoons, I evaluate and treat outpatients with other disorders and do treatment as well. Most of it is cognitive dysphagia and aphasia treatments. But like I said, only with adults now. So,
But have you done pediatrics in the past?
yes,
That's
I
right.
work with thousands of kids.
Yeah.
I just kind of prefer working with adults. They're a bit more motivated usually without any kind of tangible reward involved because they want to have a quality of life that's similar to what they had before they started having this decline, whether it be cognitively, language related, motor speech, or swallowing. Swallowing is a big one because eating is a necessity, and drinking, and it's also a pleasure. So they're very motivated typically, and they want feeding tubes out and such things. So they'll come to their appointments and do what I say.
Yeah. So we asked a question, and we communicated about the deaths a year caused by aspirations. Can you give us a little of that data that you've been?
Yeah, I was kind of conflicted as to, well, I got probably a little bit too literal about it, thinking, okay, there are people that die drug overdoses, alcohol overdoses that will die because they aspirated and they suffocated. Taking that equation out and thinking about like people that are dying of aspiration related deaths. So not an immediate death of aspiration, but people that die because of maybe the pneumonia that sets in that requires extensive hospitalization. 58,000 people a year.
Wow.
Aspiration related deaths.
And can I insert a figure? Because I like figures around here. The reason Bailey and I are friends is because the dietitian and the speech therapist work so closely together. But I looked up a number, and 40% of all of our residents in nursing homes need speech therapy and have swallowing issues, which means just about half the time when somebody's admit, we're going to be teaming up on patient care anyway. So it's a big deal.
That is crazy, though. And I remember seeing some of that when I was a clinical pharmacist, and a lot of aspiration pneumonia that would come through. So, Dr. Kizer, give us a little bit about your background. If the audience hasn't seen a previous podcast, and then what you do on a daily basis.
Done a little bit of everything. I started off in public health. I was a WIC director back in the dinosaur days, and the cat Gwendolyn, she may be dropping in for a visit.
Oh yeah.
From there, I went into academia, and I was a college professor for 10 years. And then from there, I got tired of eating ramen noodles most nights of the week. So I went to private consulting business. And so I consulted solely with long-term care. And Bailey and I probably worked in 4 or 5 buildings together minimum. I mean, we've worked together in all kinds of places. You'll find long-term care is a relatively small world. So don't make too many enemies, because you'll see them again coming up real soon. And then from there, after COVID, the consulting jobs kind of dried up a little bit. So now I too am working for a big corporation, and I still consult 1 day a week. But as far as my job with the corporation, I have to make sure basically 1,000 souls get fed 3 times a day. So food chain issues, food supply stuff, supplements have been a huge problem for me over the last couple of years since COVID. And again, just as a little segue, that's actually how Sonny and I became acquainted. I was trying to buy for my all of my nursing homes, and everything was out. And through another association, I had seen his cheesecakes before. And then I was at the house, and I don't know, Dana popped up on an Instagram, and I had a eureka moment, and I sent him a direct message and said, Guy, have you ever thought about, making this for a clinical or long-term care application? And the rest has been history, because he listened, and I tried it in some of my buildings, and it worked beautifully. And as a little aside story, I've talked about how, I guess I'm charging in. I've talked about how well I've been using this for weight loss. Well, we had some snafus, so we didn't have supplies for a while in one of my buildings, and there was an immediate increase in weight loss of 300%. So
wow,
it was
that's exciting.
Amazing.
It's not. That's not exciting, but
because my statistics tanked. But
yeah, I would say that's not exciting, but the fact that
it showed a definitive link, and so it made everybody see that this does in fact work, because everybody's just so programmed for the drink. But all my patients are sick to death of a drink. I don't want to see no more Ensure, and that's basically what I hear. What about you, Bailey? Do you do the same stuff?
Absolutely. Cool. Even where I've worked most of my career in long-term care, probably skilled nursing, assisted living, and home health as well. But as an outpatient therapist now, I will ask people, are you doing any supplements, taking anything? Oh, I hate that Ensure. I hate the glycerina, or the what's the one I'm thinking of? The
Magic Cup.
Magic Cup is, gosh, that was the best thing that was offered until.
And you guys tried Money Shakes.
Yeah.
Remember those? Are those you had tried?
And those are heaps better than the liquid version of the. At least
stuff in the cans that we're not
like
trying to say name brands of.
Exactly. A fitness on that. You can cut that out.
So obviously that's probably one of your bigger challenges is nutrition in your patient load, right?
Absolutely.
Dr. Kizer, tell us a little bit about the studies that you've done, kind of in-house, the results of those. I know you'd picked a couple, 3 patients that we had personally spoke about, but
statistics right in front of me, but I did pick 3 patients that I went to work with and see what happened. And the first patient was somebody who was diabetic and trying to lose weight. I'd never thought about using your product for weight loss, but if you want to find out the truth of what's going on with the patient, just go in there and sit with their CNAs, take a break. And so that's what I do every once in a while, because that's where you hear the real deal. I'll just drink a Coke in there and sit for a minute. And I found out that this particular patient was, and I don't want to be mean spirited, but how I would use it with my animals is she was very food motivated. And so we began to entice her with a piece of the cheesecake at night. it actually, because it's higher in fat, gave her a feeling of satiety or feeling full. So she actually was contented and didn't actually hammer the staff for snacks. And in the 2 months that I had her, she managed to lose 45 pounds. She did an awesome job. And I mean, she left a whole lot lighter. And she wanted to know how to get that stuff to because when she went to home where she was going, she was hoping to continue that stuff. I used it on another patient who was a failure to thrive. So when you have a failure to thrive, stuff may or may not work. It's kind of like just crapshoot, throwing it out to see what happens. And he started at, it was an 80 pounds. I don't know, 82, 83, 84 pounds. And I checked his weight again last week, and now he's up to 135 pounds.
That's
so
wow.
That in the course of, that's taken about 3 months. So I've also used it for, again, short-term, like I have found that your product worked really well post-COVID, because during COVID, they lose their sense of taste. They don't want to eat. And usually for a couple months afterwards, I'm begging them to eat something. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the way it feels in their mouth or something about home, but I could get them to take that post-COVID. And I used this in one lady post-COVID. She'd lost approximately 20 pounds. And I got about 12 pounds back on her in the first month. Now, obviously, she was eating better, too. It wasn't just that, but it makes a huge difference. So I'm very particular about where I apply it. I'm not just, throwing it around. But if you use it in very specific situations, it's worked wonderful. The clinical applications are astounding.
That's been exciting to hear, because, we'd never thought about that, going down that avenue.
Well, again, I did it until I was desperate and nothing else was available. But, sometimes things happen for reasons, and I've stumbled on this, and now I can't do without it. I mean, we just have to have it. It's working.
So today, we're going to talk a little bit about protein. I'm going to let you ladies kind of dialogue how that applies into your patients, and how important it is in different aspects, such as wound healing. And I'll let you take the show, Dr. Kizer. But talk to us a little bit about protein just in general, why we need it, in all aspects, really.
And I'll try to not get too technical, but in general, protein is extremely important to the body because it is what our muscles are made of. Any enzymes, any hormones, all of those things are made from protein. As you get older and you begin to have swallowing issues, one of the most, I'm looking for the word, the easiest thing, the most common things that I find that these elderly begin to choke on is the meat. Don't you find that's the first bugger to go after? Mm-hmm. And I want you to talk about that. But the reason this is important is that the single biggest indicator of how you're going to do it in either a hospital or a long-term care setting is your albumin level, which is a lab value that tells me what your protein looks like. It turns over every month. So when you're admitted into the hospital, we're going to pull a CMP, but it's going to give me an albumin level. And I can look at that and it's going to tell me how well you have eaten over the last month. So ironically, and we were talking about this before we started to film, the people who are the worst malnourished tend to be the morbidly obese. Now, why would you think that? You're looking at me funny, Brian, but think about that logically. Why do you think that those folks would have lower albumin than the little skinny little old lady? What do they eat?
Personally, based on my experience, I would say it's because they're eating a lot because they're trying to get nutrition. A lot of people, because of the food supply nowadays has a lot of empty calories. So people continue to eat because their body's looking for that nutrition. They're not getting enough absorption. So maybe I'm not heading in the right direction, but that's...
All right. I wouldn't have picked the phraseology, but, then again, I have control issues. But they eat a lot of empty calories. So the really heavy set people are eating like the Cheetos and the potato chips and I won't name brands, but the honey buns and the little treats that come 12 to a box with a cute little girl with a cowboy hat on the top.
Yeah.
That it's sugar and it's calories and it will give you energy. But as far as nutrition, you would be better served to eat the packaging. And I do mean the cardboard box that it came in. I mean, it's calories. The nutrition is negligible. So that's the first thing I'm going to do when you're admitted to either of these situations. And if I'm giving you a conservative guess, it needs to be the normal value is 3, and when you get below 3, you're starting to put yourself at risk. The average one I'm seeing is about what, 2.7.
That's what you were saying.
Yeah, and about 80% of patients come into my buildings looking like they're, or in the hospital, just anywhere. Their diet is obviously horrendous, and obviously the docs will. It's weird to see a malnutrition diagnosis on a 300-pound person, but we're giving them out like candy because they're overnourished, but they're malnourished, and then you add to the app as you get older, you have chewing problems. Meat becomes the issue, which is where I bring my attractive friend in here. And then you add to that, meat is also typically the most expensive item on your grocery bill. So it's just like a double whammy, which again, poor Bailey, what are you seeing in the ones that you work on? How malnourished are they coming to you outpatient?
Oh, typically by the time they come to me, they're very malnourished. I can see in their skin and then their pallor and their overall energy levels just coming into the room that I'm going to evaluate them in, that they are dehydrated and malnourished. Typically, my patients aren't in the obese range. They're typically underweight or very close to being underweight. Because of their swallowing issues, they've ignored for a while. They've just stopped eating as much. The switching to foods that are typically easier to swallow, you're taking away a lot of the nutritional content as well, like the snacks that kind of melt in your mouth, or there doesn't take much chewing effort. They're switching to them because they don't really know what else to do. And in the past, I've been going, well, here's a smoothie recipe that'll get you a lot of, nutrients all involved. And I'm coming up with this on my own, and I'm texting Mel, you have any input on this? Because all I can say is there's this highly expensive desserts ice cream thing that you can only get it through this website and whatever. And this isn't a meal, and this is not as substantial as they need as far as the protein. It's more protein than just typical ice cream, maybe, or it's safer because if someone can't have, a thin liquid, they could have this. But whenever I was providing education, a lot of it was, well, how do I prepare these foods? And if you just say, okay, I'm going to put you on a puree diet and everything's pureed and it looks like someone just regurgitated what they'd eaten earlier, that's going to turn them off to it. Especially people that know that, that if they're going through, chemoradiation treatment, they have throat cancer, they know that this hopefully is just temporary. They have a feeding tube to sustain their nutrition, hydration. So they're eating and swallowing is pretty much to maintain swallowing function and for pleasure. Then they're usually okay with modifying their diet like that. But if you have someone that is, has dementia, or this is a progressive illness, and you're taking away, I love steak. What do you mean I can't have a filet mignon anymore? And I never want to say that to someone. And I also don't want to say, just add water and put it in the blender because, so it's a fine line. How do you get the protein in them whenever you've had to take away and restrict some parts of their regular diets?
And to give you a good point of reference, because I like to have points of reference, 1 ounce of meat has about 7 grams of protein. So let's say you had a supplement that had, I don't know, about 15 grams of protein in it. It would be roughly the equivalent to like a 2-ounce steak.
Wow.
So it's a difference.
Okay, a couple questions that as you all are talking, what does the typical, because I'm thinking about what our audience would do, like what is the typical protein intake that a person would need? And I know that varies by activity, body stature, age, but give us some general ideas. Also tell us what you kind of mentioned briefly what protein does, but the different healing processes, like how important internally really it does for so many different healing processes.
If you're going to heal, you have to have protein for healing. Protein is what's going to form the enzymes and the hormones to facilitate the healing to actually happen. You have to have protein present to actually replace the muscles and the tissues. It's a very protein intensive process to heal. I have to give you kind of a clinical answer, but protein recommendations are 1 gram of protein per kilogram body weight, which you take your weight, divide it by 2.2, and there you go. As you get older, your body does not process protein as efficiently as it used to. So on top of that, for my elderly patients, I'm recommending 1.2. So you actually get a 20% bump in what you should be ingesting in protein as you get older to make sure everything is replacing and healing and staying as it should. And again, as people are getting older, that's typically the one thing that they begin to sacrifice. And not to sound, whatever, conspiratorial or anything, but she's laughing because I'm a wicked conspiracy theorist. But eggs were also a very good protein alternate that I used to recommend to people. And, they used to be $2 a dozen. Now I went to the grocery store and they're running like here in Wilmington, like $8.50 for a dozen organic eggs. I don't know what y'all running up there in Tennessee, but it's getting stupid up here. And so what people would have had as a meat alternate is now becoming ridiculously expensive. And people are starting to feel the pinch.
Yeah. So in wound healing, it's talk about the process of.
I would increase your protein requirements to like 1.5 grams. So then you need an extra 50% if you're trying to heal from anything. And let's say you're going in for surgery. You should start the increase in protein intake a good 3 days before you go into surgery, and at least a good 3 to 5 days post-operatively, because that's when your body's trying to heal acutely. And you need to have it. And most people don't even think about prepping their body prior surgery or procedure, but it's critical. You should start ingesting extra protein and getting everything together probably a good week before surgery. And she was talking about what she sees outpatient. I guess I'm kind of jumping around. Those folks were more malnourished. I'm working more in inpatient rehab. I'm seeing the heavy set folks who had to have a knee replacement, who had to have a hip replacement. So we're almost working on same population, but two distinctly different cohorts here, because my guys are well nourished and they typically have very good health care, and that's why they're getting a knee replaced. She's seeing the folks that maybe don't have insurance or live 3 hours away, so they don't have a lot of access. Right. And she didn't talk about that, but access to health care is a big deal, because you do have people coming 3 hours of one way to get tested, yes. Which is crazy to me that you've got to drive that far to get a provider, but that's what's happening.
So rumor on the street is, and I don't know, is sugar kind of prohibit the wound healing process? Like if you have high amounts of sugar, I thought I heard that somewhere.
Sugar, it inhibits it. But again, back to one of my stomping boxes here, more than anything, high fructose corn syrup inhibits it more than, both of them is bad, but high fructose corn syrup is even worse. And again, I was thinking about this driving on the way home, because a friend of mine was on a diet and was asking me, if you actually try to eliminate high fructose corn syrup from your diet, start looking, read the boxes. It's very difficult to do. And so everything that's in anything is there to make you less prone to healing. The other thing about high fructose corn syrup is that I said at my other podcast is that there's something called thermic effect of food, TEF, but it's a fancy word that means what percentage overhead does it take out of your food for digestion. Like, for example, with fat, if you have 100 fat calories, it's only going to take 3 calories of that to digest. So you're actually going to net out 97 calories. Does that make sense?
Yep. Whereas
for carbs and protein, you're probably going to net out more like, more, okay, that's enough. It's going to net out like, it's going to take 20% to digest protein, and maybe as much as 10 to 15 to digest a real carbohydrate. Okay. High fructose corn syrup, because of how it's metabolized, you're netting 97 calories. So again, high fructose corn syrup, because of how it's metabolized, is not only decreasing your any kind of cell turnover like part of what our human bodies do is you have to have cell turnover just to live and to stay healthy. When cells begin to not turn over efficiently as they should, sometimes that's how chronic diseases occur. So basically, we have an ingredient in our food which is putting us at higher risk for chronic disease, putting us at higher risk for decreased healing of any kind of sort, putting us at higher risk for it's facilitating more rapid aging. I don't know how to say that the right way. So it's making us age faster. It's giving us wrinkles. It's doing all these kinds of stuff. And again, I couldn't even give you a percentage. I should have looked before the podcast, but it's in way over half of all foods. That stuff is, if it said arsenic, we would pay more attention. But I'm telling you, that stuff is not good. I like sugar, don't get me wrong. But I mean, if you're going to eat something, stick with erythritol or real sugar, but stay the heck away from high fructose corn syrup. Do not feed your kids that garbage, please.
Well, and it weakens the immune system too, the immune response, right?
Yes, it does. It does decrease response, which again, right now, given all of the lockdowns and all of the funky things the governments have made society do, our immune systems are in the toilet right now anyway. So anything that we could do to increase our immune system would be the way to do it. And you and I talked about this on the phone the other day, but I looked this up, Sonny. I wanted to make sure. Did you realize that over the summer in Canada, a doctor diagnosed a 70-year-old woman, and her diagnosis was climate change?
Oh boy.
She had a heat stroke. And because she had a heat stroke, it was the environment's fault because the environment was too hot. Ergo, she had climate change.
That's awesome. I'd love to see that chart. That's almost like a joke, I feel like.
It feels like it should be on The Onion or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was for real.
Another quick question, and I've heard all kinds of different things, so I'm sure I'm not the only one that's thinking this. Is it a gram of protein per body weight, ideal body weight? What is it? If say I'm a little chunky, maybe right now, and I might be about 30 pounds overweight, would I go off of my current weight or would I go more on an ideal body weight if I'm determined?
Question. What I use is something called metabolically active weight. So if you're a little on the curvier side, you take your ideal body weight and add 30%. Okay, so let's say you're 5'5" and you're a girl and you weigh your ideal body weight is 125. So let's say you were 200 pounds. I would do 125 times 1.3, which I can't do in my head, but be about 170 pounds. So most people don't realize fat it's not stagnant, but it doesn't require nearly as much energy to maintain fat as it does muscle, other kinds of tissue. So the heavier you get, it's actually going to decrease your metabolic rate over time. And what people also don't realize is the chunkier that you get, and I know I'm going on a tirade, the chunkier you get also increases your estrogen production. And estrogen makes you more insulin resistant. So the chunkier and the bigger you get, it's going to decrease your insulin resistance, which is going to make a cycle to where you get continually bigger over time. So again, 30% should be for your protein, 130% of your ideal body weight, so you can get the appropriate amount of protein in and try to maintain muscle mass, because that's the most critical point. Once you sit on the couch and you become a couch potato, you begin to lose muscle mass even after just a couple of weeks. Research shows is that if you go to the hospital, once you've been in bed for 3 days, you really should get therapy when you're done. It's that sitting down and being sedentary is that damaging to the body. Move.
Yeah.
That is a crazy.
And it doesn't have to,
that kind of, but
you have to put on, was it life and ride around on a bicycle? You just have to move.
So talk to us about thresholds of too much protein, right? Being in the gym, there's a lot of, especially younger guys it's like they can't get enough protein. They'll take hundreds and hundreds of grams. Talk about the negative impact, because I don't think that gets out enough about kidney damage, the potential, can it be turned into body fat in excess? Kind of take us down that.
Too much of anything in excess will be turned into body fat. So a lot of people don't. I mean, protein is important, and it is the most, in my opinion, the paramount nutrient that you need to make sure you get enough of. But there's also too much of a good thing, and that's a problem that we have in our culture. But I personally would not recommend over 2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. I know I have spoken to bodybuilders who were doing well over 3. That's your business, but if you're going to do that, you're going to have to drink a whole lot of water because you're putting a lot of extra stress on the kidneys digesting all of that protein. And again, for people, I'm trying to make this as simple, but a lot of people don't realize the byproduct of protein digestion is actually ammonia. Okay. You're literally making ammonia, like the kind of stuff you would clean your floor with when you digest protein. Your kidneys convert that to something called urea. Urea is the sweaty stuff that you taste when you're sweating like a mule. That's the urea salts. That's what you're putting off. I went to Vegas a couple years ago with a friend of mine, and he thought it was a great idea to walk from the Strip down to Old Vegas. I thought it was a really bad idea, but I lost that discussion. And we walked, I think it was, 3 miles. By the time we made it to Old Vegas, I wasn't even perspiring anymore. I just literally had salt on my skin, and it was just urea salts. I wish I'd have bagged it so I could make an example. But that your kidneys have to do all that work. So the more protein you ingest, that's the extra stress that you're putting on your kidneys. And over time, particularly if you're not giving enough water to help, your body clear all that, you're going to cause some serious kidney damage. And you don't see it on any kind of labels, warning, do not ingest too much of this product, and make it sound like this stuff is a fountain of youth, as much as you want. And that's not the way it goes.
Is there a limited amount that we can absorb in the small intestine? Like, say I'm going to sit down, I'm going to knock out 100 grams. Is there a maximum amount as it moves through the small intestine that we can absorb in a setting?
I would imagine it would probably depend on the level of enzymes that you have in your gut. I mean, at a certain point, once you exhaust your enzymes, it's going to turn into fiber, and you're going to get really nasty, unpleasant GI side effects. That's a good question. I'll have to look that one up. I don't think there's some dose dependent sites for vitamins, but I don't think there is for protein. What will happen is that your body will use what it needs for muscle mass. It will convert whatever it can into energy, which is a very inefficient process. When you have to use protein for energy, the thermic effect is 50%. So if you're just eating protein and no carbs, and your body has to convert that for energy, your 100 calories is going to look like 50, which is why the keto diets work, because you're basically eating up all the, and not technical words, but you're using up all the calories, converting it into a usable form of energy. Make sense?
Yep, that does. I heard that, I think.
But again, there's only so much your body can do. And after it's used what it needs for energy, it's just going to convert that to plain old fat too. Anything can be turned into fat. So, I mean, you can make it a very expensive protein drink and drink 12 a day, but they'll still make it fat.
So Bailey, do you have any recommendations? I know people watching probably have some loved ones that are going through some swallowing issues or any just quick recommendations as far as nutrition, how to help them out, or just some pearls of wisdom that you would want to share from your profession?
Make sure that there is, if you have any concern regarding your loved one's nutritional intake, please ask for a referral to a nutritionist. If you have any concerns about their swallowing, if you're noticing them eating less or being aversive to certain foods or liquids, or coughing and choking, those are two big indicators that there are swallowing issues going on. Instead of waiting for an episode of asphyxiation or regurgitation with aspiration, or general malnutrition occurring from that, seek an evaluation from a medically based speech pathologist. And typically, even if I'm just doing what's called a clinical evaluation of swallowing, I like to recommend an instrumental objective measurements, so modified barium swallow study or fiber endoscopic evaluation of swallowing, whatever is most appropriate, to determine, are they aspirating silently? The patient might say, I don't have any issues with eating or drinking, and then I turn on the flora and I see that everything's going straight into their lungs and they're not even responding to it. And they don't have patients that say, I aspirate every day, I choke on everything, get stuck here, and their swallowing looks normal, and it's because of reflux, it's because of GI issues that haven't been identified. So it's just like one piece of the puzzle, but don't ignore it to the point where in the hospital they end up becoming frail, because then it's kind of hard whenever their stomachs start to shrink and they're losing interest in any PO intake, then getting them to start eating again, start drinking again is going to be even more challenging. And then finding foods and drinks that are safe and nutritionally,
So we're
and
looking for nutritionally dense, but
nutritionally
basically
dense.
we're looking for coughing around mealtime.
Coughing around mealtime, of course, that is number one. And that's typically where I would get a referral when I was working long-term care. They're choking while they're having lunch every day. They're doing this. Or sometimes they're not eating all their food, and I would go to evaluate them and watch them at mealtime to see. I wouldn't intervene. I would just kind of push in and see what's going on. Are they taking their teeth out and chewing on salad while they're talking to their friends? It could be behavioral. It could be that they're not drinking anything while they're eating. It could be that they actually are not on the right diet for them because of dementia or some neurological disorder that is happening, or generalized deconditioning. But making sure that you're making sure that your loved one stays hydrated, because you can survive days without food, but you can't survive very long without hydration. And so that water intake becomes less and less as people get older. They don't feel thirst or hunger as much, but and like Mel said, they don't require as much nutrition, I guess, as you get older, and protein, because your body can't process it as much. But the reduced water intake is responsible for urinary tract infections, metabolic encephalopathy from sepsis that could occur, which will cause them to be confused and fall, break a hip, end up in the hospital. And then
see, for my thing is, my caution to family members is, whatever's going on, just don't let it go too long.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, just a random fact I'm going to throw out here, but after you break a hip, or you have, the hip's a big thing. If you have a hip replacement and these folks don't start eating, the research says that their mortality, they'll probably not going to do well and probably be dead within the next 6 months. So it's not something that you want to let granny lose 30 pounds before you worry about something. It needs to start from day one, because it will snowball quickly. Mm-hmm. And once it gets to a certain level of bad, there's not much we can do.
Mm-hmm.
It was shocking to me when I was a clinical pharmacist how many people die. I mean, a hip fracture happens, and they never leave the hospital. It's just, you think, when you're young, you break bones all the time, you put it in a cast for a little bit and you're out. But it was crazy to me how many folks would have a hip fracture and never leave the hospital.
And this goes back to my caution. Before you're going to have that kind of surgery, you make sure you're taking some extra stuff in 3 days beforehand, because those are the people who do okay and get up, do well, get out of the hospital. The people who are like, oh, well, don't worry about it in the hospital. Those aren't the people who are making it back home. Mm-mm.
That is great information, though. I think that is great information for people because I don't know that they get that a lot. It's printed on a piece of paper, but they don't know how that will impact their healing post-surgery. It may be on a piece of paper, but if somebody like you all aren't telling them how important it is, I think it can be easy to say, we'll figure it out later.
Well, see, and I've worked both hospital and long-term care, and I'll be honest with you, hospitals are this crazy time up in there, and you got people being discharged of all hours of the day and night. Back in the dinosaur days, when I took my first hospital job, you didn't go home until the dietitian talked to you and you left with your stuff. That doesn't really work that way anymore. What they call it, insurance-driven discharges. Mm-hmm. That's the phraseology that they use. Mm-hmm. So we're not dictating when you go home. So right. You may get somebody to talk to or not. So again, when I see the discharge paperwork that goes home with these people, in my opinion, it doesn't emphasize nutrition as much as it should. Mm-hmm. So especially if mom's, hey, she can lose 50 pounds. She can lose 50 pounds, but she can't lose, she can't stand any more of a decrease in her albumin, and you don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's so true. Bailey, as you were talking, I was thinking, can that swallowing progression be slow? In other words, I have a loved one. Can it kind of be unnoticeable where it slowly declines over time and kind of sneak up on you that you didn't realize that they were having swallowing difficulties?
Well, every etiology of dysphagia is different. If you've had a stroke or a head injury, you're typically going to get better. Your swallowing is going to improve. There's going to be spontaneous recovery. And typically people will be able to return to some form of normalcy in their swallowing, hopefully depending on the area of the head injury and depending on the severity of it, of course, as well as the stroke. But when it comes to someone or head and neck cancer, like I said, hopefully this is temporary and you might never be normal again, but you're going to continue to progress through treatment. But with something like Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's, ALS, myasthenia gravis, they are progressive neurological disorders. And that there's no cure, unfortunately. Medications have helped slow the progression a bit, but they also come with side effects that called dry mouth or overproduction of saliva. And diet, taste changes in taste and changes in perception of a lot of things, especially environmentally. But if you can't fix the patient, you modify the environment. So that's what I did in nursing homes. I would, in assisted living, I would go in and see what's the barrier. The patient is not going to get better. They have dementia, it's progressive. They have, neurological disorders that are progressive. So I'm not going to be able to fix them, but I'm going to be able to improve their quality of life and try to increase their safety and reduce hospitalization, all the things. So when it comes to someone who's going to have a progressive disorder that is going to cause them to have dysphagia, Parkinson's, 80% of people that are going to have, 85% are going to have dysphagia during some part of it. I mean, I have patients that are referred by neurologists, and the patient says, I'm having a little trouble swallowing pills. And it might be their mouth is dry or whatever from the new medications. And I'll do an evaluation and swallowing looks really good right now, but this is a good baseline to have because you're going to have dysphagia progressing throughout. Here are some exercises to help maintain, just like physical therapy, helping, here's some exercises to help maintain your strength, your balance. Knowing is half the battle. And so if they understand this is what dysphagia is, these are signs of it, these are the risks that come with it, and here are some strategies just to help reduce your symptoms and improve your safety with swallowing. I've seen exercises help a lot, but it's temporary because it's they might get better and stronger, and then there's some regression. Better and stronger and some regression.
Yeah, and the key takeaway that I've gotten to today, which I've learned another thing, thank you all, lots of things, but that how important knowing about how deadly aspiration can end up being. I know, like you said, all of us know where to chew up our food so we don't, because we could get it, lodged in the windpipe and have a problem breathing. But I think knowing, I've heard you say it lots, that it's almost a silent killer, like you really have to take that seriously.
The people that have silent aspiration that are more likely to develop, because there's something wrong with their neurological system where they don't feel it for some reason. And if they're silently aspirating, they're just going to continue to eat and drink and they're not feeling it. And some's going into the stomach, some's going into the lungs. So and
you don't know it until it's too late.
Right. So you look for, with those cases, you're looking for mentation. Is the patient like falling asleep with food in their mouth, or are they if they're being fed by someone else? They're going to have more difficulty controlling the what's called bolus flow, how much is going in their mouth, what they want next, identifying, because this is part of the cognitive aspect of swallowing is feeding yourself. But when that's kind of gone, then you increase the risk there. But the signs for silent aspiration, changes in vocal quality. As soon as anything hits the vocal cords are the gatekeepers to the larynx, and they're supposed to dispose of anything that might be going towards the lungs and clear it. And A normal person or person with normal sensation is going to feel that and cough and have a hard time breathing, watery eyes, red face. But a person who doesn't, that's just going to pass right down into their lungs and they're not going to feel it. And who knows how often it's happening, how much it's happening, but changes in vocal quality, that gurgly sound, or coughing after eating. It could be that they didn't cough at all during the meal and then afterwards they're coughing. It could be because there's some residuals left in the back of their pharyngeal phase that have just slowly been aspirated. So, I mean, it might not happen right then, but it might happen later. And, just not just oral pharyngeal infiltrates can be involved, but gastric, backflow due to reflux or whatever. People with feeding tubes, if they're not positioned correctly, they will still aspirate. If they're not laying on the right, if they're laying flat or not elevated enough or whatever. And oral care is so important. So important. Most people that develop aspiration pneumonia, it's because of aspiration in their sleep.
Wow.
Don't go to bed with dirty teeth.
How many older people I know? My grandmother's almost one of them that would, she don't want anybody seeing her without her dentures. God rest her soul. But I would be like, Grandma, you got to take your dentures out when you go to sleep. Because you're going to fall out in the bed or whatever, but you got to clean them. You got to put them back in. And that's that generation. They're like, I don't have teeth anymore. I don't really need to brush them. They might take them out and soak them a little bit, but they need to clean their tongues, their cheeks, even if they don't have, they're not aspirating chronically because you can still aspirate in your sleep.
And my advice would be, and this is what I see in long-term care, if you think you're having trouble swallowing, don't let it go too long before you get too down. Because again, there are exercises. There's like vital stim and other processes they can do to help. Yeah. It's not a death sentence or it's not all grim. No. So I just see the people, it's a word they're afraid of. Oh my God, it means I'm getting old. I'm not going to, and so you ignore it. And
I don't want to take pills with applesauce.
Yeah. Don't ignore it because everybody, like, I've had dysphagia once. I had a thyroid procedure and Bailey, I told her it was scary because it felt like I had a chicken bone caught in my throat for like weeks. And it was very scary to eat certain things. And I didn't enjoy it. Swelling. But it made me a bit more sensitive to the people with these stuff because that was scary. It really was. And I guess I can't imagine, but it would be very unpleasant to know that would be something that was chronic that was never going to go away.
What really I want to stress, because, whenever someone's had a stroke, the first thing they're going to get is a speech eval, essentially, if they're in the hospital, speech, PT, OT, whatever. Same as a head injury, you're hospitalized, you're treated, evaluated and treated. But there's people that are going through head and neck cancer treatment. Radiation destroys, like, the tissue. The cartilage becomes stiff and less mobile, thicker. The epiglottis becomes kind of like a potato chip, but also like instead of like this, it'll look like this a lot of times, and it loses mobility. And the muscles become fibrotic just from the radiation itself. And if they are on, if their everything tastes terrible, they don't have any appetite, they're on a feeding tube to keep them nourished and hydrated, but if they just say, it hurts to swallow, nothing tastes good, they stop swallowing, they lose it. So they need to get a swallowing evaluation and intervention before they even start radiation treatment. So that's what we do where I work. But it took one of my colleagues years to bridge the gap with the cancer clinic because the doctors were just radiating their necks or heads and whatever and sending them off with a tube saying good luck, no evaluations, no treatment. And then they come, a year later and say, I'm choking, my swallowing's not good, I want to get the tube out. It's too late. There's hardly anything we can do for them at that stage. But if they get early intervention, because my job is I'll do a swallow study on them and before they start, during the treatment and after, to see like how they're maintaining. And if they're getting physical therapy for the lymphedema, if they're getting to break up some of that swelling, fibrotic tissue and range of motion for their neck, as well as skilled speech therapy for someone who knows what they're doing with head and neck cancer. They need to be kind of specialized in that because you don't treat the swallowing issues with that the same as you would someone who had a stroke. Completely different, You wouldn't use vital stim with them because you don't want to use any kind of electrical stimulation where someone's had cancerous growths in the past because it might reactivate those cells. But someone that's going to go in for like an ACDF, like specifically anterior cervical disc fusions, it depends on where it's at essentially, but definitely C2, 3, 4, 5. That starts above the, like in the oropharynx and goes down to the hypopharynx into the upper esophagus where there's swelling afterwards, and the pharyngeal space is very minimal. And so they might say, go on a liquid diet, advanced is tolerated. Well, it might take them months for the swelling to go down. It might be that there's been muscular nerve damage from that surgery because then they're cutting into and they're removing the larynx, operating and putting it back. And then they don't get speech therapy referrals. And then I'll see them and I'm like,
so don't assume.
Don't assume.
Is what she's saying. Don't assume that this is standard. Don't assume that.
Ask
because
for an evaluation.
There's a lot of moving parts. It's very easy for things to fall between the crack. I'm not dogging anybody. It's just, these people got tons and tons of caseloads. So if you have a question, if you feel like things aren't going well, please ask somebody. There's plenty of support professionals out here who will help you. We just have to get referrals, and they got to know something's going on in order to refer you. So again, don't give a year, because my mom was like that. Oh no, I don't want to be in trouble. Please be some trouble. My dad had a stroke, and she went to the pharmacy for his diuretic, and then was a problem. Oh, never mind, he'll be okay. I'm like, no, it won't. We're leaving with it today, but there's a lot of people like that. She just didn't want to be a bother. Yeah. Be a bother with a smile.
Well, I tell you, that is a bunch of great information. Thank you all. Yeah. You guys have any other last minute pearls you want to share?
An ounce of prevention. Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Everybody needs a T-shirt that says that. She definitely implements that in her daily practice, and so do I try to. But that and speech pathologist, speech therapist, same thing. There's no difference. Speech language pathologist is the whole term, but I'm too lazy to say all that. But whenever they introduce Bailey's our speech pathologist and she's going to do your swallow study, the patients go, what? Why am I seeing a speech therapist? So just know that there are swallowing therapists, which are speech pathologists. It's not just working on R's and S's in schools. It's not just teaching kids to talk. It's also working.
I didn't know there was a difference until you were on the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have anything, Dr. Kizer, any going away gifts?
I think I'm about done, but at some point I would like to talk about some of the research that I am doing right now on erythritol.
We'll have to have you back. Oh, you want to do it today? You got it right now?
Of course I do.
Okay.
There was a 2013 study done by a dude named Flint, because he found that erythritol actually improved the epithelial lining inside the small vessels and made them more flexible and less stiff and less prone to injury. So actually, on top of all the other good stuff, it started to look like it may actually have some cardiovascular benefits.
That's interesting to know.
Yeah.
Anyway, to find out what went on.
Well, we're going to have you back, both of you. There's still a lot of topics to cover. We really appreciate and we thank you for loving on our elderly. I think they've gotten so many times they get forgotten about. And it's wonderful to see two people that actually really care. And I'm not saying that there aren't other healthcare professionals that don't, but I feel like
we're the only ones.
Well, no, I worked in a nursing home. I was a long-term care pharmacist, and I didn't always see that level of love and care when I was in the building. And I mean, I've had conversations with both of you individually, and you truly are passionate about helping people. Fits right into the whole Protein Snack Shop mantra. So thanks again. We love and appreciate you.
Thank you for what you're doing. Be a game changer, life changer for a lot of people.
We're changing that paradigm. It's going to happen, brother.
Thank you all. Bye.
Have